acorn squash turning orange may have you wondering if it's still in good shape. Depending on the variety of seeds you are growing, acorn squash can vary in color. We can have yellow, dark green, tan, or orange colors of acorn squash. We will discuss it here. Acorn squash. Acorn squash is a winter squash with a mild butter flavor. It can be eaten raw and it's perfect to be cooked with different dishes. They can be botanically classified as a fruit. But they are as well considered starchy vegetables which can be used just like other high-carb vegetables like butternut squash, potatoes, and sweet potatoes. Also, the starch level of potatoes is similar to acorn squash. Acorn squash is packed with great nutrients for man's health. They are rich in antioxidants that help in getting rid of toxic elements known as free radicals. Antioxidants protect against adverse health risks such as heart diseases, arthritis, high blood pressure, and even certain cancer. Orange acorn squash. If you find that your acorn squash has turned orange, you can do or notice the following to see if it is still fine to use. Cut the acorn squash open and observe the inner part. The acorn squash should not be moldy or slimy. If it is moldy or slimy, but if it has mold or slimy seeds, it means the acorn squash has gone bad and should be discarded. There shouldn't be any soft spots in the outer part or inner flesh. You can as well tell the condition from the stem of the acorn squash. When you take a closer look at the stem and you notice the stem limps, that's a bad sign. Selecting the perfect acorn squash. To harvest perfectly ripe acorn squash, ensure they are dark green. Their weight should also be around 1 to 3 pounds. Usually, the portion that has been in contact with the ground tends to turn from yellow to orange. However, have in mind that we have some orange varieties of acorn squash like the golden acorn. Bad acorn squash. To know if your acorn squash has gone bad, just slice it into two. If you notice there are any moldy, slimy, gray seeds, then it's a sign the squash has gone bad. Also, when the stem of acorn squash limps, that's a sign it is overly ripe and may have gone bad. How long can it be stored? Firstly, you should know the right way to store them so they remain fine and edible for 2 or even 3 months. So, here are some tips for storing acorn squash so they remain edible for a good period. Store acorn squash in a cool, dark, dry place while the stalk is still intact. You can as well store acorn squash in the fridge. You can also cook acorn squash first and then freeze them. Ensure you store them above a temperature of 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, hot air can predispose acorn squash to have a shorter shelf life. Maturation time. The best way to tell if your acorn squash is ready for harvest is by examining the look and feel of the skin. Ripened acorn squash turns to a dark green color. The best time to harvest acorn squash, if you can time your planting well, is when temperatures start to dip down towards freezing night temperatures and both the leaves and vines start to die off. If you harvest an acorn squash at the right time, when you cook it, it will have a slightly firm yet buttery texture. Conclusion. Acorn squash turning yellow isn't always a bad sign. All you have to do is simply examine the squash if it's in good condition to use. When your acorn squash has orange spots or is slightly orange, it may still be safe to use. However, once it has become soft and when you slice your acorn squash open, you notice moldy, slimy, gray seeds, that's a sign it has gone bad. It should be discarded right away. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.